Just a bit here on page 100. Rand asserts that only living creatures have or can have values. Just as one cannot demand the proof of the validity of logic, since the concept of proof already assumes the validity of logic, right? You would have to prove it using logic, and they're demanding logic in your proof of logic. It's circular, and you're defeated to begin with, because once you bring logic in, they're going to say, ha, you're defeated. So, logic, like mathematics, has to be accepted as valid unless demonstrated otherwise. You can't prove it. So one cannot challenge life as the standard of ethical value. Why? Because only living creatures have or can have values. So what should a value be if it can only be had by living creatures? It has to be a value for the living creature. It couldn't be anything else. It couldn't be a value against that living creature. Then life wouldn't persist. Life, by definition, is that which has as its means of action is something that benefits itself. So one can challenge life as the standard of ethical value, since the concept of value already assumes that one is talking about a living being. In this line of argument, the concept of value is seen as epistemologically dependent on the concept of life. I am hesitant to lean on the epistemological line of argument because it appears endangered by circularity. Rand's definition of life is a process of self-sustaining and self-generated action. This sounds very much as though she is implicitly using the concept value to define life. I believe that's all quite interconnected. How could one explain self-sustaining action without the concept of action to gain and or keep something? But if life is, directly or indirectly, defined in terms of value, then in what sense is the latter conceptually dependent on the former? Now, that's all very interesting and gets deeper and we go further, but that's all we needed for what we're going to say. Even the actions of this or that little insect that perpetuates, what is it perpetuating? Its DNA. This or that little insect exhibits this exact quality, that it has to do something to preserve its own life, and therefore that of the species. Now, in the humans, we're highly evolved, and we've got a couple of different ways going about it. You can get married and pump out a bunch of kids. You can create wealth. You can create new ideas, new integrations, new concepts, give them to the people that come after you. Lots of different ways to benefit your species. And the best way, it's obvious and demonstrated, the best way to benefit your species is to benefit yourself. To do the best for yourself that you can while you're alive. To be the happiest, create the most wealth, attain the most of your values, your goals, your desires. But the question is just that, what is one going to do with one's life for one's own sake? And we know now that that benefits the rest of society. And you don't have to have society the goal beneficiary. It's just the fact that if you allow individuals their own freedom, then society will become the goal beneficiary. So it's like the hidden golden bonus or something, you know. You follow the right path and good things will come to you. If you're moral and ethical, like look at America, a moral and ethical society. The most moral and ethical of any in history. The richest, the most powerful, able to defend itself when evil arises to challenge it, spreading evil accidentally as though money falls out of its pocket and little pockets of evil are around the world because we do the wrong type of thing, supporting dictatorships or whatever, just accidentally from just the fluff out of our pockets. It's tragic, but look how powerful we are, and anyone who gets to America is in a lap of luxury. So we just need to spread knowledge of why America's that way. It's not a Christian nation, and religion doesn't have anything to do with it. In fact, religion is a detriment to America, has to be fought, and should be fought by you and me and everybody else, including the four horsemen. The ethics that they can't figure out, the ethics that baffle them when we say, why not rob and rape and steal and plunder, as is said in Brothers Karamazov, if there is no God, everything is permitted. Why not? And here's the answer to it. Ethics is a code of action for an animal, for a living entity. That's your basic starting point. And it has to support that entity's life as that entity lives. Now, Aristotle, this is silly that we don't know about this. It's obvious. It seems like an easy answer to it to say that the basis of life has to be life-motivated action. That's what value has to be, and ethics is that. Some people think the whole basis of ethics is to curb natural instinct and preservation instinct and to get us to submit ourselves to others and destroy ourselves for others, and that's the basis of society and charity and altruism. Baloney! It's obviously baloney, because in America we don't submit ourselves, we don't submit our interests. We are the richest in history because we go about getting the best we can for ourselves and leave it to other people if they want to do whatever they want to do what they want to do. And sometimes we support them with a little extra or whatever. So that's the best option for everybody, no matter what, is to let people do the best for themselves. Because it's validated right there, because ethics has to be a code of action for the individual, by the individual, for that individual. Now, Christopher Hitchens suggests that this has to be curbed in some way, and Dawkins says he doesn't know why altruism is a basic impulse in humans. He says it's interesting, we're going to have to explain someday, hopefully we'll be able to explain someday, why is it that we just want to be good to others? And so he wants to pull out the innate card. Look, if morality were innate, if it's true, as he says, that we want to be nice to others, they wouldn't be stoning people to death in Iran today. They wouldn't be preparing to wipe Israel off the planet. The Nazis wouldn't have taken women and children in the death camps and said Womenrechts and Kinderlinks and separated them and gassed them to death. If there's a basic desire to be nice, you've got to get something else on the table. It's like science. We don't just run around in science with rules from the jungle, okay? Science has evolved. It took decades and decades of highly, highly competent people to get it to where it is after centuries and centuries of struggle. Science is to that point. Politics is the same thing. They knew something about politics in the ancient world. Greece did a lot about it, which was forgotten until the Renaissance and is brought back and crystallized in the American Constitution. Politics is an old, old science. You cannot just take political impulses from the jungle and run on them. You can't take scientific ideas from the jungle and run on them. And you cannot take ethical ideas from the jungle and run on them. Ethics is a science that's evolved. There cannot be a coherent, cogent statement of ethics until very recently, just as science has reached the point it has, and politics. By comparison, the psychology is in a pre-Socratic era, almost. Some people say Freud was the Socrates of psychoanalysis, but that's nonsense. That's like saying Hitler was the Thomas Jefferson of politics in the 20th century, or some stupid crap like that. Freud was a pervert. That's all he was. So the whole question of ethics has to be a line, a set of instructions for an individual to act for itself. And it's a long story how that evolved, and you can go back. The question's old, and a lot of it is contained in the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. A lot of it. He says ethics is what causes us to live as a man. Not as anything else, but as a man, as a human being. Not as a snake or a tree. Their nature is different. Man has its own nature. It's the rational animal. And he says to live as a man is what makes us happy, and that's what ethics should show us how to do. He says the happy life, Aristotle says the happy life is more than just like a summer's day. One summer's day does not make a whole season, and one happy day in your life